seat. My name is Maria Aguilar. I'm the Race to Resilience campaign manager, and it's my great honor to welcome you all today to our event, Taking Stock of Progress, Race to Resilience in 2023. For the first time, the Race to Resilience campaign is going to present the results of its impacts, and we will get inspired by the key role that partners and members of the campaign play in advancing, accelerating resilience action. So to kickstart our session, I'm delighted to invite here to the podium Her Excellency Razan Al-Mubarak, the UN High-Level Climate Change Champion for COP28.
Distinguished guests, thank you for giving me this great privilege and honor. As the newish high-level champion, I should have really given the floor to Dr. Mahmoud first, because it was really through his engagement and his support that the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda really raised the awareness on the fundamental need to ensure that adaptation gets an equal footing in our work on climate action. But nevertheless, I take this privilege and this honor and welcome you all to the launch of the Race to Resilience Progress Report. We, as you all know, are sharing together through this launch a message of hope and a message of determination. It has been a crucial year to action. We know that this is the year where the first global stocktake nears conclusion and advances what we need to do on the global goal to adaptation, the Race to Resilience, and the Race to Resilience presents its second progress report. We know that our planet is already warming. In fact, it is already 1.1 degree warmer than temperatures in the pre-industrial era. And climate change spares no one. It is affecting lives and livelihood worldwide, leaving over 3.3 billion people highly vulnerable to its devastating effects. The Race to Resilience was launched to challenge these numbers. The Race to Resilience campaign was launched at the Climate Adaptation Summit by Alex Sharma at COP26. And it was a call to action to mobilize non-party stakeholders under one goal: to build resilience for 4 billion people by 2030. The report highlights the collective achievements of our partners, members, cities, regions, all implementing actions in 164 countries across all the impact systems of the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda. Collectively, these initiatives have pledged to increase the resilience of more than 3 billion people by 2030, with concrete action plans already covering nearly 2 billion people. This marks substantial progress, fulfilling almost 60% of pledges and representing a significant stride towards our 2030 goal. The Race to Resilience also brings a commitment to accelerate nature-positive action, because a resilient future is not possible without nature. Partners have pledged to protect, to restore, and manage 60 million hectares of natural systems by 2030. Today, actions cover only 5.5 million hectares, which mean only 9% of nature pledges are on track. This highlights the urgent need to do more. The race to resilience is also a race for gender equality. 62% of our partners are prioritizing women and girls as primary beneficiaries. This highlights the critical need for gender-responsive adaptation. And the solution stories within this report illustrate on-the-ground actions by our partners. But the race is far from over. It is only beginning. Our progress serves as a reminder that our collective efforts must intensify to create a resilient world for present and future generations, leveraging the power of nature, of inclusive action, and using all hands on deck through partnerships between public sector, businesses, financial institutions, civic society, local communities, and indigenous peoples. With gratitude to our partners for their unwavering dedication to the race to resilience, this progress belongs to us all. It is proof of what can be achieved when we unite in the face of a global challenge. The urgency is clear. Our mission is critical. And together, the whole of society, we can enable a future where people not only survive climate impacts, but thrive despite them. Thank you for your attention and look forward to our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Roxanne, for these energizing words and for sharing a little bit of the outstanding achievements of partners and members. Now, to deep dive a little bit more into the achievements of our partners and the outcomes of the progress report, I'm very pleased to invite Marcia Toledo, the Adaptation and Resilience Director at the Climate Champions team, to moderate our next session. Marcia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria, and it's my pleasure to invite to the stage Roxana Boakes. She's the research lead of the Race to Resilience Technical Secretariat, and Anand Hatwardhan, who is the co-chair of the Measures Advisors Group of the the Race to Resilience. Welcome. This has been an amazing year. The campaign has almost 3 years, so 2 years very much of hard work of the partners, of the Technical Secretariat, the Measures Advisory Group, but also as well the leadership in advancing how to measure adaptation and resilience, how to measure adaptation and resilience at both quantitative and qualitative. I would like to hear from you, Roxana. In these year and a half that the partners are really very active delivering action, what progress has been achieved in the latest reporting cycle?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So first to say, I would like to thank the Methodological Advisory Group, our colleague, Anand, and the Expert Review Group. They are the two advisory bodies of our campaign. They are being key. Their work is totally voluntary, and they are key on improving the application process and the metrics that we have. Therefore, first, and also to thank our partners because they are the campaign. So first of all. As a researcher of the Center for Climate and Resilient Research, it's a pleasure to show you today the achievements of this year. Next, please. So, but I don't remember very well the numbers, so, but we have the slide, we have technology for that. So, from the last year, we have been in the campaign more than 2.5 years, but now we are in a progress from what was built before. Now we have 34 partners, up 13% from 2022. They work with 647 collaborating members, 86 cities and 78 signatory regions through two partner initiatives, Cities Race to Resilience and Regions Adapt. But in terms of scope, our partners are developing actions in 164 countries, concentrated in vulnerable developing countries such as Mexico, Kenya, Brazil, Colombia. 62% of our partners are prioritizing women and girls as key stakeholders, which is also key. And additionally, resilient solutions cover all the priority systems of the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda. Next, please. Next slide. But one of the key goals of the campaign is making 4 billion people more resilient. So this year, our partners pledged to make 3.17 billion people more resilient by 2030. How it works? Our partners have to apply, then to make a pledge. So what is the goal by 2030? And then to build a plan in order to show us how they are going to reach that goal, and then presenting the action they are doing on the ground. So this year, they started to present the plans, and they are targeting currently 1.87 billion people. This is an estimated number of people impacted by the campaign positively, obviously. Next slide. But also in terms of nature and finance, that are also key aspects of the campaign. 59.8 million hectares have been pledged for protection, restoration, and management. And in terms of plant, 5.48 million hectares has also been incorporated in the plans. Sorry, so many numbers, I know, but I finished it soon. And to support all these ambitious goals, the mobilization of finance has been huge. So it has been 39.44 billion of US dollars as well. So next, please. In terms of transparency and reporting, that is also important to show, 97% of our partners has responded to the General Information Survey, 86 have submitted a pledge, 72 submitted an action plan, and 52 they are reported on adaptation finance. And the last slide. But we are not, next slide, please. Yes. But we are not only seeing numbers, because we analyze as well how they are making more people more resilient in the qualitative side. And we are working with resilient attributes, which we are analyzing how they are building resilience with 19 subcategories of those actions. And what the figure shows that our partners are working a lot on finance, equity, planning, experiential learning, coordination, but we have still to work more on basic services, connectivity, collective participation. So this also is showing us what are our new challenges for the future. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Roxana. And you touched on a point that is very critical. The collective effort of the partners of the campaign is also to put transparently how those efforts are being advanced, what works, what doesn't work. Anand, how does the Race to Resilience metrics framework contribute to accountability and transparency?
Thank you very much, Marcia. And first, let me say this has been a real pleasure for me as a co-lead of the Methodology Advisory Group to work with the Technical Secretariat and the campaign. It's really been a collective effort. And I think quite a pioneering and unique effort in terms of measurement, right? We all often talk about the challenges. One of the challenges of adaptation is the lack of metrics and the lack of ways of measuring. And so I think in some ways, the progress that the campaign has made in developing and applying this metrics framework is itself a huge contribution. So I'd sort of mention two things in terms of the accountability and transparency question that you raised. The first is it's important to recognize that this framework includes both process indicators and outcome indicators. Because very often, what you can actually measure is not the outcomes, but the actions that you're taking. So the fact that we have a sense of are we doing the right things or are the partners doing the right things becomes very important as a way of looking at accountability. And so the whole, as Roxana mentioned, the whole introduction of resilience attributes as a way of looking at characteristics of actions. Are we doing the right things? Are we including gender? Are we looking at social inclusion? Are we looking at stakeholder engagement? Are we looking at governance? So these are really the key underlying determinants of what can help people and communities become resilient. So it's not just counting the number of people, but it's really giving tangible form to how they are becoming resilient or what is needed to make them more resilient. So I think that's the first point. The second point is, I think the application of this framework, which involves a fairly rigorous, I would say, data collection exercise, really promotes, I think, transparency and accountability, because partners have to now really think about questions of validation and verification, which go beyond just a standard accountability approach, but really start getting into questions. How can you demonstrate that your theory of change is actually valid? And that itself, I think, is a way of promoting greater accountability and transparency. Because if you can do that, then you build confidence that you are moving in the right direction. And I think that's a very important idea for the campaign to bring to the larger community, especially as we have seen, for example, in the global stocktake. One of the big questions was, how do we understand adequacy and progress? Well, I think the campaign has something to contribute to that question.
Fabulous. Thank you, Anand. And in that sense, what was the reason and the process to enhance the metrics within the campaign?
So I think this is where I really want to highlight the kind of collaboration between the Methodology Advisory Group, which is a very diverse group, including practitioners and academics, and the Technical Secretariat. So I think the resilience attributes is one very key step forward. We looked at resilience action clusters, so sort of how do these attributes then map onto actions in different clusters. So we had an exercise that involved the MAG to think about, for example, the links to the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda, because at the end of the day, you also want to understand what are the actions actually being taken. So you want to connect that to those actions. And then the third is, I think, in a broader sense, from my perspective, and I'm an academic, so I really look at the campaign as beyond just the initiatives of the partners, actually as a very unique learning environment where we can actually test and understand how this works. How does, a lot of the times we hear that adaptation is confusing. What does it mean in practice? What do we mean by people are becoming more resilient? So even the headline target that you mentioned of making 4 billion more resilient, what does it mean to become more resilient? And so I think they're giving more concrete form to thematic targets as they are under the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda, to the resilience attributes, which capture some of the essential elements of what it is needed to make communities and households more resilient becomes really important. So I would say those are some of the ways in which I think the campaign has contributed, not only for within the scope of the campaign, but I think has the potential of influencing the much broader conversation happening under the UNFCCC on the stocktake and the global goal on adaptation, for example.
Thank you very much, Anand. And Roxana, finally, lots of lessons learned this year. A very intense work program, but very successful as well, leadership of the partners. Can you share insights into the future direction of the campaign framework?
Yeah, of course. First, I forgot to mention that everything that I showed will be is visualized in a Data Explorer that will be launched on the 8th. So you can explore all the work that our partners are doing. So that will be amazing. In terms of the future, um, as Anand mentioned, we are working on the frontier of knowledge, and that is always challenging. And I think I would like to say that we have at least two dimensions of work. The first one is related with the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda. We really believe that we can connect. We started doing it last year, and we have to connect. We think that our partners can play a key role on accelerating or catalyzing all the work to get the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda target a reality. And on the other hand, the capacity building dimension, helping our partners to increase their capacity of tracking actions, but also on reporting. We have seen that even when we can have the best or the ideal indicators, if we don't have data or the partners don't have the capacity to collect that data from the ground, it will be impossible to have a good metrics framework. So we are working with the partner. We started a work with them, building communities of practice, trying to build with them the metrics framework, the enhancement process of the metrics framework, and we will continue doing that because that capacity is the one that have to be built in order to have the information we need.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Roxana and Anand. This was a fantastic conversation. I appreciate it. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Gonzalo Munoz, our Global Ambassador for the Race to Resilience, and also a high-level champion from COP25. Please, Gonzalo.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Marcia, and thanks to the Race to Resilience team for setting this such a fundamental program on the stock take for the Race to Resilience. Especially thank you, Your Excellency Roxana Mubarak, for your leadership and for continuing this fantastic work ahead. We will be having now a panel on building resilience together with the Race to Resilient Partners leaderships. And so therefore I would like to invite my distinguished panelists to join me here. Well, first, Sareen Malik, Vice Chair of Sanitation at Water for All. Thank you, Sareen. Also, Fiona Schmidt-Leitner, Vice President of Global Health at the GSK. Thank you, Fiona. Also, Eloise Chiku, Climate and Adaptation and Regions 4. And I don't know if Rina arrived. Is Rina here? Because she wasn't arrived. Rina, no, hasn't arrived yet. No? Okay, so therefore, if Rina hasn't arrived, then I will join over there. Is it on? Now on? Now off? Good. So thanks to the three of you. If Rina joins, then I will take the podium there. But I would start with you, Sarina, on us working in this amazing global platform. We all know that accountability and transparency is really key to sustain ambition and, of course, to track progress. Sanitation Water for All has the mutual accountability mechanism, and over the last year, the SWA partners have increased their number of climate-related commitments. Can you please reflect on that specifically and give us some examples of climate commitments made by civil society partners?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Sareen Malik from Kenya. I think I should specify that because it will be relevant to what I'm going to say. Now, we often say that within the water sector that climate change is a risk amplifier. water is a resilience multiplier. And this is really critical in terms of in the direction we're going, especially when it comes to resilience. Now, for any of you that will be joining the different water panels and the water events, you're probably going to hear these horrible stories about how women these days have to walk further and dig deeper pits to access water as a result of climate change. And this is where the water component is really critical, because if we do not build wash climate resilient systems, then these communities, of course, are going to be terribly affected. I cannot begin to explain to you how getting to those pits, digging for that water by these women, the domino effect that it has on the life cycle of these communities. So, the second point is that we are well aware, and I think we should be honest, in a sense that there's a disconnect or a bit of a dysfunction between the water sector and the climate sector and the climate change sector, whereby we say sanitation is water's poor cousin, water is the ignored cousin of climate change. And this is where the Sanitation Win Water for All partnership comes in, through convening what are known as multi-stakeholder platforms, bringing various actors from state, non-state, private sector, research and learning around what is called mutual accountability mechanisms. Now, what does that mean? It basically means that commitments have been made through our extraordinary advocacy and campaigns and the work that we do with heads of states and ministers and various partners. And then we all sit and see, did you keep your promise? And if you didn't, why not? And if you did, okay, what has been done so far? So this is why it's really critical that these different platforms have managed to actually fix or bridge a bit that disconnect that we are seeing between the water sector and the climate change sector. Thank you.
Charin? Yes, there we are. Fiona, you know GSK is a member of the Water Resilience Coalition and is the first Race to Zero business leadership case, having pledged to increase the resilience of 15 million people and reporting directly to the campaign. So how crucial has adaptation and resilience action become for the private sector, particularly in the context of the pharmaceutical industry?
Thank you very much, and extremely important, both obviously as human beings of the world, but also as a business, it's crucial. And we don't see it as either or, so clearly getting down our emissions and our nature use, protecting nature is critical. We have targets for that and we're on track. But maybe the exciting bit for today is resilience. And for us, we're a global pharmaceutical company with the ambition to improve the lives of 2.5 billion people by 2030. But what our focus here on is in resilience is clearly resilient health systems. So it's great to be here today on the world's first health day at COP. So we're quite excited about that, to really have recognition from all the multiple stakeholders, the absolute criticality of human health as we get ahead of climate. So we also know that climate has many impacts on human health, and there's many case studies, but perhaps I'll bring it to life just very quickly with three. So clearly we've got things like malaria and vector-borne diseases. Warmer, wetter climates increase the spread, lengthen the periods infection. We've got air pollution leading to asthma, respiratory disease, and we've got zoonotic conditions which are now being spread. So that's critical. And then the second part maybe of the question of why resilience is important to us is that as manufacturers of vaccines and medicine, we are clearly reliant on water, so making sure that there are clean, constant, safe supplies of water that we're also safeguarding for communities is a critical part of why we're here and why we believe in this.
Well, thanks, Matthew, and thanks for bringing that health aspect in the Health Day. So it's great to connect health, climate, and resilience in one great example. So Eloise, Regional 4 leads the initiative Regions Adapt, with 78 regions as part of Race to Resilience. Congrats on that, and thank you for your leadership. Where regional subnational governments key stakeholders to accelerate climate adaptation and resilience action?
Yeah, no, we really believe that regional governments, so what we mean is provinces, states, and regional governments, really have a role in adaptation because of where they're situated. They're intermediaries between cities, municipalities, and national governments. They have a territorial scale. And I would say a territorial scale is particularly relevant for resilience and adaptation because it goes beyond the urban. It connects, cities with mountains, with river management, which we were talking about water, with coastal areas. So having this territorial outlook that regional governments carry can really help in bringing solutions that are integrated and bring different actors. Regional governments are known to work with the private sector, but also with civil society, but also with research institutions. And in that way, they really bring another voice and can play a role of enhancing. And I'll just, give you a few examples of what's happening with regional governments. Just for example, on nature-based solutions and on nature, we see that regional governments are really leading the way. For example, in the government of Catalonia, they have a carbon system which comes to finance and invest in nature-based solutions. We have in Jalisco, restoration of the Santiago River. Also, the government of Wales, for example, is looking at restoring pitlands. So we really see regional governments, because they have this connection also with their forests, with their nature, kind of taking those solutions forward. And another example that I think is relevant is, and for us, we think that regional governments need to have a place in the international agenda. And we have regional governments, financing directly the adaptation fund. For example, the Quebec government plays a role in financing the adaptation fund. So why not open up these financial mechanisms to other governmental players, such as, cities and regional governments?
Thanks so much, Eloise, and great that you brought that. Also reminds me of the role of the national governments into preparing our cities for heat waves. And I'm, of course, remember the work of Arch Rockefeller Center in terms of creating also the conditions for having the chief resilient officer in many cities and regions, including my hometown, Santiago. And I wasn't reflecting on that because most of the heat resilient officers in those cities are women. So great to also be joined by three amazing women working in this field. And great that you also brought the water aspect, right? We will have next year the UN, the certification convention, expecting to reach an agreement. So I have no doubt that water is becoming a much more critical aspect, as you mentioned, Sarine. And we know that radical collaboration is at the center of the resilience building. When it comes to SWA, when you endorse the Race to Zero campaign, is launching a compendium of case studies. Can you please share more about those case studies?
Absolutely, and let me take this opportunity to launch the compendium, the climate compendium from SWA in collaboration with the Race to Resilience. The key word here being collaboration. This is really an argument in terms of this work cannot be done alone. We need collaboration. We need the power of partnerships. We need the power of these multi-stakeholder platforms, the campaigns, the resources, really in terms of trying to move this agenda. What we have in there about 30 case studies which really demonstrate how civil society, state, non-state actors, private sectors actually work together in terms of mainstreaming climate change within the water sector and vice versa. In fact, we have so far, purely through these multi-stakeholder platforms and these mutual accountability mechanisms, have about 40 commitments that came out of SWA's universe that actually spoke to the water climate change nexus. So we really invite you to take a look at that and see that, it is possible for us to bridge this gap, and this is a start, and we hope that by next year there will be a full-blown event where water is at the center, at the fore, at the back, at the front, and on the side.
Yeah, absolutely. I do expect, and again, I do expect that next year can be a really important water year, as I know that the elements are getting together. And speaking about cases, right, as the first Race to Resilience business leadership case, can you please elaborate on the work championed by JSK in increasing nature and people's resilience as featured in your progress report?
Yep. really excited to and really proud to be part of this. So thank you. So there's just 3 cases which I'll highlight high level to you. 2 of them are around health resilience, and the third is wider social resilience. So the first on health resilience is very linked to our purpose. It's around innovating for diseases which are climate sensitive in order to get ahead of them for the future and to have tools to keep long-term resilience of the human race. So we're doing lots of R&D into new medicines and vaccines that treat climate-sensitive diseases. We have pledged $1 billion of funding until 2030, and over 50% of that funding actually is going on climate-sensitive diseases, so new medicines and vaccines for climate-sensitive diseases. The second area is innovation without actually going the last mile and getting them to patients. Isn't useful innovation. So it's really around how we work with communities and in partnership to strengthen health systems and to build resilience at a health system level. We work with partners such as AMREF, Save the Children and others to really train healthcare workers on the ground, build resilience, do training around that, which is really exciting. And there's also a program that we are working with Save the Children and the Minister of Health in Malawi, which is to do a proposal for the Green Climate Fund, which is specifically focused on health. So trying to get those precious few pounds of the Green Climate Fund, which are going on to health, but potentially, we're submitting it next year, could release about 30 million pounds of funding for Malawi to get ahead of climate-sensitive diseases and do better planning. And the third area, you'll be very pleased to hear, is where we have operations that rely on water. We have water stewardship programs, so we have a big operation in Nashik where we do manufacturing, and we work with local organisations to build water resilience for sanitation and health for local communities, including women, but also for agricultural use. So so there are, and I think there are more cases in the report, but those are 3 to highlight today.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Fiona. Eloise, please tell us about the work led by Regions 4 in mobilizing regions in the race.
Sure. So we've been working through Regions Adapt to bring 78 regional governments within the race. And essentially what we ask governments to do is we ask them to commit on 4 commitments. One is to develop vulnerability assessments. The second one is to develop an adaptation strategy. The third is to take action. And the fourth is to report globally, such as that, the progress to the race to resilience. And we've really seen progress. We see that 67% of our regional governments now have, a climate strategy with an adaptation actions and also some objectives. And we want by 2030, through the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda, we're aiming to have 100 regional governments that have adaptation plans in place. So that's been a lot of our work. And actually what we've been doing this year is focusing more on the question of climate justice, because we believe that communities need to be at the center of adaptation planning. So we are actually launching on the 5th our climate justice report that's going to be zooming in on the expertise of regional governments in terms of climate justice. And just to give you a few examples on what regional governments are doing, we have, for example, the government of Scotland that have launched their climate justice fund. And they were actually one of the first governments to look at loss and damage and carry this to the COPs. And their climate justice fund is coming to fund vulnerable communities, notably in Eastern Africa, to deal with the impacts of climate change. But we also have other regional governments, such as, for example, in Minas Gerais in Brazil, where they've actually developed their adaptation strategy. And one of the core pillars is climate justice, which is actually quite innovative. And finally, just to name another example, we have the government of the Basque Country, who's been developing the adaptation strategy, but looking at gender. So they've been looking at what does it mean for women to be integrated into the planning, what is the role of women in being leaders in terms of climate. And we think those are very interesting contributions to the race, and we want to continue building them with the Race to Resilience.
Thanks so much. Congratulations on that. I just want to now close the panel with a very quick answer from each of you, hopefully in 1 minute, around what significance does your initiative see in being a part of the Race to Resilience campaign, and what optimism do you hold regarding the future of the campaign? So if you can go one by one, 1 minute answer.
Look, like I said, it's bridging and fixing that disconnect that we have between the water sector and the climate change sector. I think if we combine our resources, our forces, our knowledge, our people, we can really do amazing things. We can fix the world. I truly believe that. Thank you.
So for us, it is the importance of getting health and health resilience on the agenda. That has been a great conversation that's been lovely to be part of. And we really just very supportive of the work that the resilience, Race to Resilience is doing to get across to cut across silos, to make it bigger than the sum of its parts, and to stimulate collective action.
I think for us, one element is that we feel that, we're talking about the global stocktake. It needs to be a global review. But a global review needs to take into account citizens, communities, regional governments, cities. So a strong call would be for the Race to Resilience, the climate champions, to continue connecting what's happening here with the global stocktake, but also with the global goal on adaptation. Because we don't want the global goal on adaptation to only be funding national governments. For us, it needs to be decentralized. And for example, cities, regional governments, they need to be able to access directly financing for adaptation. And we believe that the Race to Resilience, the climate champions, can help us connect the Sharm el-Sheikh adaptation agenda with the global goal on adaptation and the global stocktake.
Well, thanks so much to the three of you. Thanks for the organizing for setting such a good, diverse panel of experts and leaders for the Race to Resilience. And so please help me to give a round of applause to them. Thanks so much. And with that, I have the honor of inviting my dear friend, His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Mohiuddin, leader of the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda, to give us some closing remarks. Please take the podium, Dr. Mohiuddin.
Thank you so much, Excellency, leader, and doctor. Well, you need to discount all of that to match what I'm going to share with you now. It's and apologies because I've seen some of your many faces in previous sessions, and I always start by sharing facts. I cannot change them within less than an hour unless they are changed. But anyways, good news that climate finance at large has doubled. We know that from IPC report and your friends at the center. Great news. Bad news, don't make it no. Well, for the subject that we are tackling now, the share of climate finance for adaptation had declined from 7%, as miserable as it was, to 5%. And that needs to change. And that shouldn't really be in a kind of a useless race between mitigation and adaptation, because definitely, as being reflected in all speeches and the possible outcomes, that we need to triple the investments in renewables. We need to push further our work and efforts in reducing the emissions. But here there are the arguments. Is it to double or quadruple the finance for adaptation? The standard recommendation is doubling, but based on these reports I just cited, they need to be multiplied by 3.5 as a factor. So perhaps we can say, at least to please some active people in the Egyptian presidency of the COP, quadruple that. And I think with the demands coming from the leadership, the real leadership of Excellency Razan al-Mubarak, that if you add the ambitious goals and target that she presented yesterday and extend the work of adaptation as it should to biodiversity and nature, here the whole landscape of finance needs to be revisited. So my simple proposal, and based on the success that we have seen in this COP from day one, quoting a good friend, the president of the World Bank, and he knows you well, he's, Bob Zoellick, prior preparation prevents poor performance. So we need to prepare well, not for 2030, but for COP30. Let's make these time frames shorter. And here, because we can have accountability, I don't know who's going to be the leader of the COP that will be hosted in 2029, but I know very well Razan al-Mubarak and what she is capable in doing, and we hope to have a strong partner with her. For the next COP, which is going to be focusing on finance, and for the following COP that is going to be focusing on NDCs. And for the excellent points about this kind of disconnection between not just water and climate action when it comes to adaptation and the impact on poverty, I'm afraid there are many issues of disconnection that we need really to fix while we are trying to have a good agenda for change. We made a good job that you are building on here in COP28 in Sharm el-Sheikh by making the SDGs the comprehensive, holistic approach that covers sustainability at large. If you are doing well in water, congratulations. It's not just something to do with adaptation, it's SDG 6. If you are doing better in land management and food security, congratulations, you achieved SDG 2. If you are doing better in resilience, this is SDG 11. If you are doing better in energy efficiency and access, this is SDG 7. So this false dichotomy that was created and get us really busy fighting in different camps need really to end. We need to have this kind of united, integrated, holistic approach. This is not against specialization. This is not against those who have their life 24/7 dedicated to one particular area of focus. We need the specialist. But if we are losing the attention to the fact that we need the SDGs that are very much are off track themselves, 12% only of the SDGs are on track, and that includes actually many of what you talked about now in water, in issues related to agriculture, and matters related to do with resilience at large. So we are relying on your support for the success, not just of this COP, which had a great start from the very beginning, because of the fruits of good preparations that resulted in the loss and damage fund to be announced in the first hour of the meeting, that resulted in a $30 billion unprecedented support on private sector initiative and catalytic funding for global engagements. And that was tested. That was not just somebody, Mr. President, we have 100,000 participants and the world is looking to us, let's do something to announce. That was hard work for almost 2 years, and that was tested in Kenya, in Nairobi, for 4.5 million, tested with private sector, with capacity, with possible partnership. We need more of that, of preparation. So take finance seriously for next year. Take the preparation for NDCs from now, please, because the NDCs are becoming in some countries just an irrelevant piece that are not helpful to the investors, to the coordination of the work. And we have seen the test that I cited. If the experts are telling us that for Africa, for instance, we need 110 billion, and your NDCs are telling us it's only 55 billion required, so no surprise that whatever you are getting is no less than 11 billion. You go and undermine your ambitions, you are undermining your partnership, you get much less than what you deserve. And here it's not governments, it's people impacted by the compromises in the system that we have seen. So those two are big issues. Just now we have been sending congratulations to COP28 presidencies for achievement, but many messages as well for President Lula and his COP30. The Race to Resilience campaign is alive and well, this last time we checked. Yeah, okay, good. 4 billion people by 2030 active through the networks and civil society. I will not count them after you, I trust you, okay? All right, okay. One day we can have a selfie with the 4 billion with new technologies. And then the final thing, Insurance Accelerator Initiative. This is a strong arrival, and I know that especially your country has a lot of great names in insurance. I work with many of them. But here there is a new dynamic. Loss and damage is not just about funding. It's about new narrative, new dynamic that will really take us from what was called the last resort to become the first test of our achievements and failures, and then you do better in adaptation, and meanwhile you push those who are not doing what they should be doing in mitigation to do the right thing. Otherwise, we'll be saying the same thing again. It will be very boring and it will be very embarrassing, and you cannot talk about credibility or integrity anymore, even if you have a nice report to monitor that. Okay, all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Dr. Mahmoud Mohiuddin, my dear friend.
Thank you. Yes, this what lost. Yeah, friendship. Thank you.
Yeah, and now I'm going to call another friend of the house for final closing remarks, Mr. Feike Siegesma, well-known ambassador of the Race to Resilience and of the cause of resilience worldwide. Thanks so much, Feike. The floor is yours.
Thank you. It's very difficult to do after the closing remarks, the final closing remarks. I don't know what to add after the excellent opening remarks of Her Excellency Razan. So thanks, Razan and Mahmoud, for pushing so much this adaptation agenda. I mean, I don't need to stress, but I'm very happy that adaptation is so high on the agenda. For many years, climate change was only something of mitigation. And I'm glad that we, last year, put the loss and damage on the agenda, because it's more than mitigation. Some people are suffering today, have loss and damage today, and that need to be filled in also. But next to that, and sometimes in my country and Western countries, climate change effects of today are cellars or roads which are flooded with some water. But in Africa or in Bangladesh, climate change is affecting the lives, the food of the people today. And that's much more severe. Like Macky Sall said last year, counterpart of von Leyen for the African Union, we Africans suffer the most. We Africans cost the least. And we do hope that you all of the world community do take care. And I think it's maybe an inconvenient message, but it is not incorrect at all. We need to put adaptation high on the agenda. And therefore what we did in the Global Center for Adaptation, which I co-chaired together with Mr. Ban Ki-moon, former Secretary General of the UN, we worked out the best practices for climate adaptation, and especially for the most vulnerable countries. So what did we do? We worked out seeds which can survive when it is flooding, or seeds which can survive when there is severe drought, or water systems which can work also and store water also when there are droughts, or protections of city, or protections of infrastructure. So best practices on the most important point. Now, next to that, we have also, in collaboration with the African Development Bank, allocated $25 billion for projects, especially in this case in Africa. Same counts in other countries. What is the problem? The problem is that the private sector is almost absent in this whole debate. The private sector today is funding 0.5% of the global adaptation budget. That is neglectable, and that is not good. The private sector needs to find its way to the money. The money needs to find its way to the private sector. I don't understand, by the way, why the private sector does not address adaptation. There is also a self-interest. The private sector will be vulnerable in their supply chains, will be vulnerable in their agricultural input streams if climate change will impact it further. So there's a self-interest to work on adaptation. Next to that, and it's not a dirty word, the private sector can make money by doing projects, by helping people to build dikes, to build infrastructure, to develop new agricultural techniques, and that helps the world. So I would like to make a plea also for the private sector to start up. I'm so happy that Mahmoud was able to put not only loss and damage, but also adaptation stronger on the agenda, that under the leadership now of the COP here in Dubai and Razan, we build further on adaptation. I think this is just the start. We have neglected the topic. The private sector is too much absent. For many people, amongst others in Africa, this is a reality today, not tomorrow. We have the technologies, we have the ideas, even the money is being allocated. Let's move on in the benefit of people today and generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oops. thank you very much for reminding us that we must keep moving forward with determination and ambition, but of course, keeping our commitment to accountability and transparency. And that's at the core of the campaign. Dr. Mahmoud, we want to give special thanks to you for supporting the Sharm Adaptation Agenda and the Race to Resilience, and we hope to continue with your legacy. And of course, Rosanne, for joining us today. So now, please join us to celebrate the launch of both reports at the networking area of the Resilience Hub. We have a reception happening there, so please join us. Thank you.